Welcome, everyone. This is the Mike in the Asylum podcast with your host, Jesse Netto.
Liam Grant.
Ron Van Buskirk.
Haley Michael.
And we're going to be talking about some of our favorite horror movies, or at least in my case this is, because this was my pick. And today we're going to be talking about The Eye, or something else that I can't pronounce very well.
It's The Eye, the 2002 version.
The original, not the remake with Jessica Alba. We'll save that for another day.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was made in 2002, and I think we should give our general impressions first. And do I want to go first since I'm the one that suggested it, or is that something?
Normally general impressions go by the first person.
I saw this one really young. I saw it before the remake came out, and it's the reason I'm afraid of elevators. So it had an impact on me, so that's nice. And I really just think it's a wonderful movie. It's filled with nice spooks. It has little shaky parts here and there, but they don't detract from the whole picture to me.
Well, I watched this movie today. I had a lot of pleasant surprises. I was super excited to talk about this movie, and then I have a few nitpicks here and there, which I'm sure we'll get to. But overall,
They were all wrong.
Are they?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Since it's his pick, they're
Yeah.
wrong.
All right. Let me get my
10 out of 10.
let me get my case file ready for this. But
I would really respect you if you had one.
no, I don't have one today.
I'm sort of with Liam on this.
Thank you.
I do have a little nitpicks with it, but overall, it was pretty good. It felt like a Lifetime movie at one
That
point.
really hurts me.
I think it was just a product of its time, and it was also an overseas film.
Because to me,
And-
that's the most drastic insult you can sing
Yeah.
at something. Oh, it feels like a life. I couldn't think of a worse
Well,
burn.
Well, the thing was, it just felt like the production wasn't fully there. I did take a liking to the protagonist, which is always good in a movie, and I also and the spooks were really good.
Yay!
That's what really saved this movie. It was that.
Asian horror movies are better than ours.
No.
In terms of spooks.
No.
Yes.
The Ring.
The one exception.
One exception, with that one exception, we can't just that's
No.
No,
That's the exception
no.
that proves the
You
rule.
can't put an
Here, I got-
asterisk to your verbal.
Yes, you can. That's why asterisks exist.
Yeah.
I got
You're verbal.
example number 2. Okay.
Bring it.
Oh yeah,
They
you
can't
ready
see
for
her.
it? Godzilla. Because I
Get
was so,
the fuck out.
No, see, because you're scared there's
we're
going to
take
be a
break
sequel
while
coming,
Liam
right?
gets killed
No.
by Jesse.
Oh really?
Are we talking about the Matthew Broderick one?
Yes.
There's never going to be a sequel, my friend.
See,
Dude.
but aren't you scared that there will be one?
Yeah.
See?
How does that make it
You're
a good
welcome.
movie?
See, it's now scarier than the original.
How can there be a sequel?
See,
How
see,
can
he
they-
gets my point now.
How can there be a sequel to a movie that no one acknowledges?
Even it creeps up on you like a ghost ship.
Yep. I love Ghost Ship.
Oh really?
The beginning.
Oh, okay.
Okay, all right. Haley, go ahead.
So I went into this movie expecting to love it, absolutely love it, it was gonna be a 10 out of 10.
She hated
You
it.
see his
and
face.
it wasn't my favorite. Now I'm not saying it was a bad movie. I thought that it was genuinely scary.
I should've-
And I thought that the ghost scenes were really great. I really did. But there were definitely things that I didn't like about it that I just couldn't get out of my head.
I should have brought Raquel. She would have backed me up on this movie.
Shoulda, woulda, coulda.
Well, that's why we have this podcast, so we could air our grievances and discuss what's good and bad about these things.
I was not excited about watching this movie.
But
I want to point that out. But I was glad I was proven wrong.
Remember, audience, he suggested Muckman.
Yeah.
Okay, but what I will say about this podcast, there has been times where I came in hating it, even when I was going to talk about it. But then when we started discussing it more, it kind of was I can see
And
it.
honestly, I'm hoping that's going to happen with me. I
Okay.
really do.
But I'm kind of with you.
Well, that okay.
What was
I
that
got an uphill
noise?
battle.
Okay, go ahead and start off us with the plot.
So, at the beginning of this movie, we are introduced to our main character. I'm horribly sorry for how I'm going to pronounce these things. Wong Kar Moon. They call her Moon the rest of the movie, so we're just going to go with that. And
M-U-N, if you guys want to know, that's how it's.
did they say Mun or Moon?
I
I think they said Mun.
It's Mun Moon. I think it's they have their own
Yep.
like dialect.
So we're introduced to her, and the first thing we know about her is that she's blind because we're introduced to her walking down the street with one of her canes and her sunglasses on. And over this, there is narration going on. It's basically the whole gist of the movie that, like, I was once told that, like, the world is horrible, but it's also beautiful. And that's kind of the entire theme that this movie is based on. And after that brief introduction, we're thrown right away into the surgery for an eye transplant so she can see.
I did not see that coming though.
Well, oh, really? No.
Let's see. Okay.
Okay.
I was gonna say, like, and this, I'm terrible about this with movies. I think about stupid little here and there things. I'm like, how much would this eye transplant cost? Do they actually
She
just give those out?
Is
Or,
a
like,
professional, renowned violin player. Thank you very much.
that she gets kicked out of her own club because
Yep.
she could see.
Later, spoilers.
Sorry. Oh yeah,
I
spoilers.
did not see that coming either.
I swear to God.
It's like you're not special enough anymore. Sorry.
My question,
Special
my
enough,
question
get out.
is this a thing? Can you just like cornea transplant and like take a blind person to like total perfect eyesight? Or-
I mean, it worked in Metal Gear.
aha.
Well, okay, so kind of veering back to this beginning scene here, I thought it was a little cheesy with the music and like just like the narration over her just walking. It didn't feel
I think it's
a little,
supposed to be to give you like a nice like cheery sense of her like hopeful
felt-
going into this.
And I mean, like, it's not like I hated that. I was just watching it. I was like, wow, this is really cheesy to me.
I didn't really get that
But,
vibe.
I don't know,
but
I just-
we have to forgive it a little bit because one, it is foreign, and two, it's
Foreign movies are notoriously cheesy.
Well,
That's true.
Well,
I was kidding.
No, I wouldn't say cheesy. I would say like the production of it. Like the overall thing is like great, but then of course they have those things where it's like it doesn't transfer well over probably to our country as
That's okay. That I will agree
Yeah.
with. There are
And,
some tonal aspects that are
there.
very different than
And I was,
we're
and I'm
used to.
considering that too. It just like when I was watching it, I was just like, it kind of seems a little cheesy.
and this
it,
movie's
it-
almost 20 years old too now.
yeah, and that's
So
true.
it's crazy.
Oh my
That's
God.
I
true.
know. Welcome to my life.
Scary.
So after that, it's right away. Like we don't even see the surgery. We just find her in a bed with like bandages wrapped around her eye, and we're introduced to Ying Ying,
Ying.
who is adorable and bald because she.
You said he.
I did. I thought I said she.
Maybe he did.
I don't know.
Sorry. Go ahead,
Only
keep
the
going.
audience will know. But yes, she's all chipper and bright, and she wants to make a new friend, and they start talking and having a good time. It's all like, oh, once you see, we're gonna play and have a good time, and it's all like, oh, it's heartwarming.
And yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Ying Ying, it was my favorite part of this whole.
Yeah.
movie.
She's adorable.
She's adorable. Like
Too
my-
pure for this world.
Like my heart goes out to any child, of course, dealing with stuff because she's dealing with a brain tumor.
Yep.
So
You see a scar on her head where they've
Yeah.
already had surgery, and it's horrible to think that she went through that.
She said this was going to be her 18th operation.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
so sad.
And that's the thing I like about this movie, that they do kind of inject those like real life things that are like the horrors of the real world that have nothing to do with the ghosts at all.
And see, and that's what sucks me into movies is like when I can relate to the
Yeah.
protagonist. Like you could be like you could feel like their bond. Like you want that you want that bond. You want it to be a part of that bond.
Yeah, you want to cheer for the pro tag because
Yeah.
the pro tag wants to like get over that
Yeah.
like challenge.
Yeah, and then so
That was
after,
awkward. Sorry.
after that, we were introduced to like Dr. Lowe, one of the Dr. Lows. There's several Dr. Lows.
How
And-
low can you go?
Low.
Son of a bitch.
Sorry.
So
I was singing low earlier too.
they take the bandages off for the first time, and they're like, if it hurts or if there's any problems, we will put it back on, and there's no big issue. And so they take them off, and she starts like trying to like flicker her eyes open, and she sees like this vague, hazy silhouettes of people. And this is the thing I really like, because that means when you start seeing the ghost, you only see them as like, huh, there's something standing there. I can't see what it is, or if it's even human, but it's there. And this is the first time we see that, because she looks at her like grandma and her sister, and then off to the side there's this really tall thing in the corner, and it's just like,
Well, and this is the part where, of course, I haven't seen the Jessica Alba 2008 version, but one thing that they did that I said that they didn't do for this movie that I was kind of like, wouldn't that be, is The fact that when she opens up her eyes, they're not bloodshot. They're nothing. They're like normal brown eyes.
There's not even
It's
bruises around her.
Yeah, it's not like her. Even like not even like bruising around her eyeballs. Or
He was a
anything.
really good doctor.
Very good, very delicate. And evidently, she can perform tears like that.
I did think of that when I was watching the
Yeah.
movie, but
Okay.
like,
As soon as
and-
Dr. Lowe comes in, I see the operation was successful.
I'm sorry, audience.
Even the-
Apparently, this is gonna happen the entire
And-
podcast.
and-
Oh, you know it.
And I was gonna say, like, even with stuff like that, like I do nitpick things. It doesn't ruin.
Oh, it does.
for
Like,
me.
yeah, I noted it, but I was
Yeah,
like, eh.
exactly. So good.
And so she gets a little bit of pain, and they put the bandages back on her, and then they send her off back to like the patient care area where now her bandages are off again, and she's trying to look again, and Ying Ying shows up and is like, oh my gosh, can you see me? And she's like waving in front of her face, and she's like, yeah, I can see you. And then she runs off to tell the nurse about it, and Moon looks over and sees another one of those figures standing, and you get a nice little orchestra like do-do-do, and it's like, okay, there's some spooks going on. And again, I really like the effect of this where it's like you can't see what they are, and that makes them significantly scarier than if we saw them like holy.
And to be honest, like I think, like her visual, like she was seeing it, but she wasn't. She was just probably thinking there's another person in the room. Like for us, we're like,
She hasn't.
That's
Yeah.
not right.
Yeah, she hasn't yet had a reason to be like, hey, who's that?
Yeah, and I really like that too because you don't see her like flinch or anything like that. I mean,
like,
of course
ooh,
you're looking
it's
from her
darker than
perspective,
normal.
but we know that it's not normal.
Yeah, like
but,
knowing horror tropes and how movies work, we're like, oh, that's obviously a ghost or some shit. And so I think the next scene is later that night. Am I right?
Sure. Oh,
Okay,
with
yeah.
the old woman.
Yep.
Yeah.
Where there's an old woman in the bed across from her, and she sees a figure come up to the woman and like lift her up, and like they walk out of the room together. And as she's watching this, she sees both of the figures pass through the doors without like pressing them open, and that's first clue that like, well, that's not normal. So she wanders into the hallway, and at this point she's very like, her vision's completely blurry. She can't really see much or well at all, but she does see at the end of the hallway this figure in like the blue like hospital gown and stuff, and she's making a very unpleasant noise that I did not care for because like meow mooing of the dead.
Yeah.
These
Literally what it sounded like.
That's exactly what she said. And so she's like, hey, can I help you? And I like that because her first instinct isn't, oh, that's creepy. Her first instinct is, hey, man, how you doing?
And I felt like at that point, like, you know how we said, the viewer, of course, says, oh, yeah, you just don't walk through doors without it moving. But for her, that could have been visually what an opening was.
She has
lost
no
her-
framework for anything.
Yeah, because she said, like, I think she lost her sight at 3 or 2.
Two.
So
She wouldn't remember.
She wouldn't
like,
remember much
anything.
at all.
Like, she doesn't know what she looks like. She doesn't
Yeah.
know what any of her family looks like. And
exactly. So it's definitely, like, all new to her.
I would have loved that joke if she was just like, wow, humans are disgusting.
Yeah.
I thought we were all way prettier than that, but okay. So the figure is standing at the end of the hall, and then it kind of disappears for a second, and the noise stops. And it's like, okay, the noise stopped. Yay! I'm sure she went away. Nothing bad's going to happen. And then from directly behind, you hear very loudly, me! I'm behind you! And then it pans, and she's right over the shoulder, and it scared the shit out of me.
Dude,
because
it made
I
me
was
jump.
I was watching this with headphones, so it sounded like the person was behind me, and I was like, oh my god. So yeah, this one
So
totally
it's-
got me. I'm
so-
not even gonna lie.
Yeah, so it's pretty much the Grim Reaper.
Yep.
Yeah, that's taking her.
Well, we don't see him. We just see her for a second. This
Yeah,
old lady.
Yeah, the old lady. Like we get to see her.
And this is kind of the first hint where you see that the ghosts don't like to be seen because she's kind of fucking with her. Whereas like she like disappears from behind her and then she's back in front of her again and reaching out. And what were you about to say, Liam?
Oh no! Like since you brought up Grim Reaper, I want to say that like he looks weird / lame in this movie.
But there's a bunch of them.
Yeah, well, like the only one I get to see is like later on in the movie, and I'll talk about him when that comes.
Alrighty.
So I'll just put that on the back burner for a little bit.
I liked that, but
Sizzle.
so
A little sizzle.
So I think the next morning, she's in the wheelchair being pushed around by a nurse because her sight's like coming back more and more, and she asks to be taken to a mirror to see herself for the first time, which becomes important later. And she takes a good long look in the mirror, and then Ying Ying shows up and is all like, "Hey, friend, how you doing? Let's play and have a good time together. I'm about to go to surgery, and it's very sad." And then she's like, "Before you go, let's take a picture together," and they do, and it's adorable. And Ron didn't think she looked hot.
Oh yeah, she had a cheesy look to her.
She's never seen before. She doesn't know what a good smile looks like.
She looks adorable.
Okay, never mind. I won't say it here because I'll say it later.
Okay.
Go ahead, keep going.
And so, yes, then they have that picture, and it's a lovely moment. And then we're cut to them driving her home. Mm-hmm. And this is a scene that I liked. I found rather unsettling because it's just like the visual of it was great. Because as she's driving home, she sees a man standing in the road and like walking against traffic. And like no one's paying attention to this, no one makes any deal about it, and she just watches, and that's kind of like unsettling to see.
And I think that's what makes this movie so great is the fact that she's not freaking out because she's taken this in for the first time. You know,
she's suspecting things are off, just not radically off.
Well, and like I remember like seeing that scene and thinking like. I mean, I would maybe even ask, like, is that normal? Like, do people just stand in the middle of the road now? Or, like, but, like...
Do people do that all the time?
Well, she's starting to see things like she doesn't know what normal is, so she's just kind of taking it in right now.
Well, what I was going to say is I'm glad the movie didn't do that because if, like, 50% of the dialogue was, oh, that's a thing, and then people going, what, that wasn't real, and then she go, oh, that would have gotten really tired really fast.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
I really hate when movies, like, dwell on things like that.
I think it needs to be settled at this point, which it was.
So they get home, and they're watching home movies together of her as a little girl. We find out that her parents...
I'm shocked that her vision has, like, increased so well where she can watch home movies now.
I think it cut to her, like, her perspective a little, and she could see, like, vague outlines, but nothing, like, super clear at this point.
Okay.
The doctor even says that, like, your vision's never going to be perfect. It's just going to be better. So... yeah, they're watching home movies. We find out that the father, like, died, and I'm assuming the mother, too. And that... No, because the father was going to come back.
Yeah, the father was...
They mentioned something about divorce. The father's gonna come back, and then they'll all go to Vancouver.
Right.
She doesn't
want to
right.
because she can't even write Mandarin herself.
Yeah.
Whereas like learning English would just be another like a whole level of like difficulty for her at the moment.
And she wants to be very independent about that.
And so we're seeing the video, and I think this is the point where they say it's like, oh, even then you were a little like odd as a child. At some point, I think. When
and that's where like I was like, okay, because we're as the audience, we know that she's visually seeing these ghosts, of course. And so at that point, I was kind of like, is it the eyes that's making her see these things, or is it the fact that she had some sort of like intuition for ghosts or something, and she lost her sight before she could actually use it or communicate that?
I think you could read it both ways. I know we talked about this before the podcast, but you could take it as like she had something before.
Yeah. So.
And the only thing that I thought, because I was thinking the same thing, but like just because she's blind doesn't mean that the ghost wouldn't be, and you can still feel presence be around you. So I would think that she would kind of like, I don't know.
But they do have the very specific line that they like don't like to be watched. So it's like she
That's
was incapable
true.
of doing that.
That is true. Yeah.
So even if she did like sense weird things from time to time, she wouldn't have been like, "Oh, I bet a ghost is standing next to me." So it's awareness that they don't like.
And here's another nitpick I forgot to mention: if you do have the sight of the person who's seeing these things, right? Where does the sound come into? Because I don't think your eyes control the audible of a ghost.
Well, again,
because like you're hearing the old lady talking.
Because the ghosts didn't care before. Like if they were around her, they weren't being observed by her, so they weren't making noise.
But there was also ghosts that accidentally made noise that didn't know that she was viewing them.
Right, but like that's where you say that like maybe. That maybe beforehand she didn't have this. That's where I said you could like go either way.
Okay. So. Yeah. Okay. And I think it was more. The sound was more for us, the audience, to watch it. Like
also, she wouldn't know that a ghost was making that. She would just assume, oh, some kid like screamed or something.
Yeah, that's true too.
So this is happening. Her grandmother goes away, and they hear like a knock at the door or something. Something causes her to go to the door, and she goes up, and there's this little kid there with a baseball cap, and he's all like, "Yeah, that's exactly what he sounds like."
Have you had my report card?
I'm looking for my report card. That's not what he sounds like.
Have you seen my report card?
Yeah,
And she's like-
it's kind of creepy. It's just a kid.
You don't see his face like the
Yeah.
baseball cap is covering it.
Do you play Fortnite?
Oh my gosh, Liam.
So she's like, "Oh no, I haven't seen your report card." She's very genuine in the moment, like trying to help, and then you see her grandmother kind of like look over and be like, "What are you doing, girl?"
Like, they're messing with you.
You can tell that something's wrong by the way
Yeah.
she says that. Like she knows more than what's going on. So we cut away. I think this is where we meet little Dr. Lowe, who is like, because they go
Which
for.
I want to go back to that report card thing. Later,
Oh, we will, yeah. We go to a little therapy session, I believe, where they start. I feel like something else happens before that.
I'm
Does the calligraphy happen before that?
No, no, it's after.
Okay.
No, it's not.
So yeah, she meets Dr. Lowe, who like
Low. Sorry.
we made that joke twice now. So he's basically saying that it's like this is going to be like a difficult transition. Like you're going to have to become reused to
Yeah.
everything because if you touch things, you know what they are. But if you're just looking at like he holds out a stapler for her and
yeah.
asks what it is, and she's like, oh.
Yeah, no, she tries reaching for it and then
Right.
Yeah.
answers the question.
So,
And-
yeah, and what you just said, for her reaching out, you could tell that like that's how she's trying to make sense of her world.
It's
like,
instinctive.
It's like I can see it, but I want to touch it so I can
Associate the meaning.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I do like that.
Yeah.
Just because.
I didn't want her to look at it.
Do
and
we
be like,
talk
"Stapler."
about
All
the
right.
Americanized version at all?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, because I've
It's
seen it before. I actually.
it's really close to this.
Well-
like, there's nothing to spoil.
Okay.
All I will say is at the beginning of the original one, they did give you a little look of like how she lived her everyday life while she was blind. Do you remember that?
I do.
Like she would she kind of went through her morning routine and how she like filled up her water and how she did this and how she did that.
Every movie with a blind main character does that. Like I remember Daredevil did that.
I guess I haven't seen a lot
And
of movies like
In this
that,
one,
but
it sort of did that. Like we didn't touch on that, but before the operation, she does have a like scene where she goes home and you see her like tapping things as she goes along to like know where they are to make sure she's in the right spot.
well, but
So it's not like a whole routine, but it's like
Yeah.
you know she's familiar with her living place.
yeah, well, and I like that, but I will say that I feel like the Americanized version didn't really touch a lot on how she was adjusting in that way.
I don't
Like,
remember doing that either.
Yeah, I don't think it really showed like doctor's appointments of her like trying to get used to her eyesight. I remember maybe a scene where she's like, "There's something wrong, fix me," or something like that.
Legasp!
Yeah, but there was
leg.
none of like this normalized like, and I think that's interesting. You know, I'm not personally friends with anyone who's blind or anyone who like has gone through like a transition where they're like going from blind to being able to see. I don't know how many people actually go through that transition.
I don't either.
But it was really interesting to see it because it's not anything that I really think about. So, you know.
I did know someone who was blind, and I did get to see like what kind of habits they have. One thing that always rang out to me was the fact that like when he had a 20, he'd fold it a certain way. His 10s would fold it
In the beginning of Daredevil, they do that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it was Daredevil that did that too. And so when I saw because it was Daredevil, because I was like, I actually know someone who does that.
Well, and that's interesting to me. Stuff like
Yeah.
that is very interesting.
Because they have to associate real life stuff that we take for granted because we have vision, but they have to, like it's nice to see like how they have to adapt to life, So we go ahead. Sorry.
I think after this we are introduced to like the concert thing that she's a part of.
Oh yeah,
Where there are a bunch of like fellow blind musicians and she's playing the violin and they're all having a great time, and he their conductor like does a little congratulatory thing for her where he's like, oh, she can see now, it's a good time, and everybody claps and applauds. But then he takes her aside and tells her that like
she asked for the schedule.
right, she asked for the schedule because they're gonna play with some like famous artist, and he's like, I don't really think we can give it to you because you're not like blind anymore. And she's like,
Which
but
I felt was very wrong because like she's worked hard.
a lot of people were kind of rude in this movie. Like it was very casual.
And
But they did it with a smile on their face too.
I do.
I don't remember many smiles. I just remember like a bunch of.
no, I remember smiling.
I mean, I do understand that, like you know, like you'd want, like maybe the other people would have been jealous of her
Right.
sight or something like that.
That's
And
the
I
only thing
understand-
I could figure.
Yeah, but at the same time, I just felt it was very harsh for her to be like, oh, now since you just got these eye transplant, like the whole 3 years you've trained for this is down the drain.
So yes, that's what she was clinging to, and
Yeah.
so to have that taken away is
Yeah.
very like devastating for her. And also during this scene, a dude comes up to be like, hey, we have a meeting coming up, and he's like this, I don't want to say weird looking, but he's like albino sort of, like with white hair and pale eyes, and it focuses on him a lot, and he never shows up again or does anything.
I think it was like they were trying to make the audience think like, oh hey, he's weird too, just like the old lady or the kid with the report card, and like even,
it's just
even
weird people are around.
Yeah, even the pro tag was like staring at him like. Like it was building up to be a weird moment where like the guy's like, "What are you looking at? There's nothing there." But instead, it's like, "Yeah, sure, thank you, I'll be right there." And so it just, it's like, no, I was finished with my sentence. My bad.
All I wanted to say really fast was the transition from the doctor's appointment to her playing the violin was the weirdest thing to me. I didn't like a lot of the transitions. And it was very noticeable, and I don't know why. Because usually, like,
I'm going to go back to this later.
Usually, I would be, like... I know transitions happen, but usually they happen naturally in a lot of movies, so you either, one, barely notice it, or it's just, like, you know, they try to hide it as much as possible so that you don't even worry about it, or they make the transition super unique so that you notice it, and you're like, oh, but I really like that transition, or whatever. This one, it literally just cut from one thing to the next, and I don't know why. Like, I think it was just so... I don't know. It was just... I didn't like it.
There was one that I thought was weird, but I didn't notice anything with this one.
If like...
Personally.
Some of these transitions, they feel like a bump in the road when you're driving. Like, it's just out of place. You don't feel, like, uneasy in, like, the good way since this is a horror movie.
I think that's because...
It felt messy to me.
I feel like... What the issue here is, like, we're very conditioned on American movies, which are very formulaic and very... Hello, that's mine.
Sorry, I was trying to build a pyramid.
It's very formulaic in how movies are edited. Like, a lot of people know a lot about editing just by virtue of having watched movies, but that is different from, like, country to country and culture to culture. So I don't think it's, like, sloppy in this one. I think it's just, like, a different way of doing things, because they are more about, like, direct, just, like... We're going here now.
And I can accept that for sure. It just weirded me out. And again, it probably is just because I'm not used to it.
I feel the direction that they were trying to do with that, and maybe it just didn't come out for you, is the fact that like they're just showing you her life. Like, you know, like now, you know, like of course we didn't get to watch her blind life. We're seeing how she's now adapting with sight. Yeah. And I think that's why they're trying to show, hey, this is her apartment life. This is her social life, this is her whatever.
There you go. It's kind of like a routine, like a very segmented.
That's
an interesting way of looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and it is. It just kind of weirded me out. I wasn't expecting it, and I guess that could be a good thing. It just caught me off guard. I just didn't.
I understand.
It wasn't my favorite.
So I think we're now at the calligraphy part.
No, because there's another interaction with the boy outside of her hallway.
Oh, okay.
Because she goes to him and sees a few like lanterns outside of one of the doors and is like wandering up. Because earlier we saw her grandmother like dropping off candles or lighting them at this little mini shrine going on, and like she's observing it, and then she's like, the kid is right here, and she's like, oh, hey, what's going on? And he's like, have you seen my report card? I'm really hungry. And he starts eating the candles, which is kind of strange.
Now
I didn't know if he was eating candles or breads until he put the candle in. I was like, oh. Okay.
I really like this scene because this is the scene where you actually see her mother or grandmother staring through like the little peephole of the door.
And she's talking to nobody.
And she's talking to nobody. Like she's bending down and talking, but she's not talking to anybody. And I thought that was really great.
This would definitely be like the first moment where it's like, okay, something super spooky is going on.
Yeah.
And so she's like down by this shrine, and the door opens, and it's presumably like one of the neighbors, and he's all like, what are you doing? Like he's immediately sort of like
are you the one eating my candles?
No. It's clear that he's unsettled.
Stop eating my candles!
He's like, I gotta keep lighting these.
It's clear that he's unsettled and like wants her to leave, so she does. And I think then is the calligraphy.
I'm not gonna lie. I like if I open up my front door and I just saw some lady hunched over my little shrine thing, I'd probably be like, what the hell's going on?
I am like, if that happened to me, 95% sure she was there to fart in front of my door.
Aww.
And then like,
you guys are taking a beautiful thing and mocking it.
I was actually curious. I wanted to ask, is there any significance to him eating a candle, or is it just supposed to be creepy?
I think it's just supposed to be creepy.
Because I'm like, out of all things, if I see somebody in a candle, I'm just like, that's just weird.
That's
like,
one of the
beautiful
things
thing
I
about
enjoyed
movies,
about this
you could
movie
make it
is that
meaningful if you wanted to.
I guess you could. I just didn't know if there was
Sorry,
any sort of
what?
No,
significance.
What happened?
No, I'll wait. I was talking at the same time. My bad.
Oh no, wait, I didn't know what you were saying.
Oh no, I was just gonna say that's one of the things I enjoyed about this movie. It makes me want to like study more about their culture and like see what I miss.
I was gonna say
Yeah.
if anything is off about it, it's probably just that like
It
that
is a
it's
culture thing,
it's a shrine, so you probably shouldn't be messing with it. And
That's
so
true.
he's so cavalierly like,
Well, see, and like kind of like how you said it, right when you said about the whole eating of the candle thing, maybe that's the whole significance. Is like they keep burning candles because maybe like it's some sort of like consumed.
There's
with the
reasons
spirits
for
or
it that I
something.
used to know, but I don't remember at the
Yeah.
moment.
Well,
I should have researched. I'm
and see,
sorry.
like, this is
Yeah.
the small stuff that like I just don't know about,
Yeah.
and I feel like I miss so much in these movies, or like I misunderstand a lot just because I don't know.
That's fair.
So at this point, if any of the listeners out there that know the significance behind this, go ahead and message us on our email or any of our social medias.
Yep. So after this is the calligraphy scene where she's learning how to write because she's never had to do it before, and we have a little back and forth between her and her teacher, who's like, "Oh, back in the day, I used to have like 3 lessons a week, and now it's just 1." So that's like, it doesn't really factor into anything. I don't think.
I feel like
on a
he was-
thematic level.
I feel like he was just a retired guy,
He was.
and that he was just.
There's definitely commentary about
Yeah.
like losing the old ways, but I'm not. I'm trying to think if that ties into like the themes and stuff, and I'm not sure. They probably do.
I don't think it's the major theme.
It's not the major thing, but it might like have something to do with something. Anywho, so she's writing. It's going pretty well. Like he's putting up her little like posters where like on the fridge, like, oh, she's doing a good job, and she tells she's having a good time, and then like just out of the blue, it's just like, why are you in my chair? And she looks up, and there's this lady standing at the corner who's looking
And it
at her
sounded
very
like-
angrily.
And it sounded like a dude at first, and then I'm looking at a woman. I'm like, what the hell's going on?
And then like she looks away and looks back and it's gone, and she's like, somebody is like, do you have another student that's like really bad at me or something? And he doesn't notice. He didn't even turn or flinch at the noise. And then she's like, okay, I guess I'm just gonna go back to my calligraphy. Why are you sitting in my chair, motherfucker? And then the ghost just like swoops at her,
Right
and
at
like her
her.
face gets all messed up, and Moon screams and is all like, oh my god, and knocks over some ink, and the dude is like, see, this is where I was saying like people are like a little rude, like not like overtly rude, but he doesn't say, are you okay? What happened? He says like, oh, what's going on? What did you see? Like, or he says something that's like more blunt than like I'm used to for these
Like,
sorts of things.
Damn crazy.
It's,
woman.
no, yeah, he's like, what did you do? Or something
Yeah.
like that.
And
And
I think that's a culture thing. It's like I think a lot of those people. It's not like hey, are you okay? It's more like, look what you've done. Look what. And we are.
that
those,
ink
like-
cost a lot of money.
And there's a lot of Americans like that too. But I've seen that with that sort of like
Native Americans or Native Americans?
Option A, option A. Sometimes B.
So this is where she's truly like, okay, this probably isn't normal. I'm going to like go and be like, hey, help.
Help.
And I think she goes to old Dr. Lowe, who is immediately like, oh, what do you? No, she goes to young Dr.
Yeah,
Lowe,
she goes-
little
yeah.
Lowe.
Because she opens up by saying, "Will you believe me from what I'm going to say to you?"
And she lays it all out,
yeah.
and then like he listens to her, but then at the end he is immediately like, okay, I'm gonna go talk to like one of my psychologist friends, and we're gonna have
Yeah.
to talk to you. And she's like, you
don't-
why if
yeah,
you don't even
believe
believe?
me.
Yeah.
And,
So
see, and I think that was it. Like I think like at this point you could tell that the doctor was having more feelings than just patient, and whatever
Yeah.
doctor. But because he wanted to believe her, like he wants to take her for her word and everything. But then when she lays it all out, he's like,
Seeing
yeah,
ghosts.
we need a shrink.
Uh-huh.
Like this is.
And I think this is the part where she talks about like beauty again, and like saying is like if this is what people like see, then it's like not worth it or something like that. Where she's like the bad is outweighing the good.
Yeah. So and I feel like that's this whole movie. It's like that's the undertones of the like is it worth seeing?
If I saw stuff like that, I would definitely be in the same position saying, oh yeah, the seeing stuff sucks.
So after this, she goes to a nice little like shop for like food times, and we're just chilling, and she orders, and she's very uncomfortable, and then she sees like a figure looking at her through the glass, like directly staring at her, and is like, oh, that's probably not okay. And then And then she comes around the corner, like, holding a baby, and she doesn't have a lower half. Like, there's no legs and stuff. And it's like, well, that's not normal.
Well, it's a really low skirt.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
And so...
That wasn't even the creepiest part of this.
There's,
scene.
like...
The low skirt?
No, of the
Oh,
half
okay.
body.
There's hanging meat because it's like a food shop, and like she has a weird tongue that's licking at it.
Yeah.
Like
This is
Weird
the
tongue
weird.
lady.
This is the weird part.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and go ahead.
and she's like staring at this like and then a waitress like comes up to her and it's like, oh hey, you can see him too, and she's like, oh hi, person who's going to exposit for me, and she's like, oh yeah, they don't like when you look at them, and it's like, oh, good to know. So I kind of like this because in like an American movie we would have had the what I like to call the library montage where she like runs into a library and like searches through old books and is like, oh yes, the spooky ghosts of 1974 and blah 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 blah. No, she doesn't do that. She just happens to run into a weird plucky waitress girl.
And I feel like that's good because like I feel like personally that there is people that can see things more than just
It establishes that this isn't like
just her.
completely unique.
Yeah, so I felt that was perfect, and then but at the same time, like when they brought her food, she was like, "Nah, I already saw that woman licking
Yep,
it."
I'm down.
Even though it was a ghost. I mean,
And it was the ghost of the shop owner because it like cuts to pictures and shows them all as a family together.
It was the shop owner's wife and son, probably, right?
Uh-huh.
Son and
Infant.
the woman who was telling her that she's they don't like to be looked at or whatever. She says that he was like the last person. He hasn't sold his restaurant because he knows that her spirit is still there.
Yep. And that's the thing
And-
that like the knowledge of spirits and stuff is very talked about in this movie, because I think this happened earlier where we cut to her grandma with those people in the apartment with like an exorcist or the equivalent of an exorcist, and they're talking about how it's like their son committed suicide, and they're asking us like, don't blame yourself and that sort of thing.
I think the exorcism part was when she did her like solo violin thing, right? With the you know what I'm talking about? Like she was playing.
Oh,
yeah.
But
And
the guy was consulting them about it.
Okay.
Yeah, he
Okay.
consults about them with it before,
okay.
where
My
he
bad.
basically
Yeah, no, you're fine.
Shoot me.
and in this moment we're set up for something later because he says it's like, oh, like because he committed suicide, that's like a terrible sin, like his spirit won't be able to like pass on, like he's stuck here repeating that moment again and again and again.
That is a thing from like different religions to different cultures and stuff, is that suicide's the ultimate sin, like there's no forgiveness for it, kind of thing. That's like a lot of people's beliefs is like you get a ticket to hell. Like there's no
It was definitely like aggressive the way he was talking about it. He
and
wasn't sugarcoating it for the parents. He was like, "Oh yeah, your son sucks."
And I feel it was like that was the culture too. And, it's like they don't sugarcoat shit.
I hope we're not being horribly offensive, but oh well.
No, I feel like I don't know. I feel like we're gonna upset anybody. Like
We're going by what the movie has shown us.
It's shown us
Yes.
exactly, and we're just interpreting what we see.
So
Sorry.
no, you go.
I just wanted to say about the weird tug lady. If I,
Her name is Veronica. No, I'm just
How dare you?
if I was a ghost, I didn't want to be seen. Like that would be the last thing I would think of to do to scare someone away. But it's also like the best thing to do to scare someone away because it's the weirdest freaking thing.
And I also put myself in her position is the fact that like she's a ghost and that this restaurant was probably their life, and that's what she probably loved, loved about life, and now she can't taste it. And I feel like that's kind of her soul, like not.
Also, I do feel like the ghosts are just as surprised by her as she is of them, as will be evidenced in the next scene, because after this she like leaves and is like trying to dart across the road, and as she tries to dart across the road there's like a school kid like running towards her, and he just passes right through her, and they both kind of look at each other like, what?
Yeah, like what the hell just happened?
Like the kid too. And then
with that, I actually thought that the kid was surprised because he had just died.
that's
and
the,
I thought
like he didn't know.
Yeah.
And it was more of just like
I feel like he probably got hit by the car, but his soul kept running.
Like he thought he was just chill.
He was
and
chill.
because you see him later because there's a commotion, she goes over and sees a car and finds the boy there like bleeding out and dead, and she sees the boy staring down at his body, and so I was assuming that's when he knew.
I like the fact that they didn't make him so grotesque, like by the car hit. he looks.
They
like
could have gone so far with that.
But,
I'm glad they didn't.
but
Gotten
the
worse.
beautiful thing about it, and I will say whoever did the makeup was great. It looks like he had just road rash on his face, which is typically what would happen, you know.
And a lot of the ghosts have looked like paler
Yeah.
or like more like sunken eyes and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And when she looks at the boy, she sees standing over him a very tall figure, which is the thing that Liam doesn't like Grim Reaper fellow, who he looks like a shadow with a pale white face.
No, he
looks like a
looks
woman.
like a pale white face, but with like a turtleneck
Super
up
turtleneck.
to his ears.
I never
Like
saw
he's
that.
just hunched over, looking down. He's like,
They used the budget for the CGI.
Well, the way I interpreted it was that it's like a shadow person wearing
Yeah.
like a porcelain sort of mask. Like I didn't see the turtleneck thing.
Yeah,
hi,
Liam's turtlenecking right now.
hi.
dude, that totally could be taken a different way.
I-
Oh,
Oh,
I didn't know that. Okay, we're cutting that out.
Yeah, we're cutting that out.
You
Okay,
sick
no
man.
no turtlenecking.
God damn it.
Turtleneck,
Okay.
whatever I want.
But go ahead, keep going. Man.
I forget what happens after this
Oh,
though.
okay. Well, like, of course, yeah. The boy's surprised that he's dead. Like, I think it's sinking in.
Because the next thing in my mind is the elevator scene, but I feel like something happens before
No,
that.
I want to say before that is
She runs into Lo. Like Lo's there, and he's talking to her.
okay. Was
Yeah.
that it? What's the part? Was this before or after the elevator scene where you see the grandmother burning the
That's
stuff
directly before.
before the elevator?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like she goes from there to the elevator.
Okay. So get me there, and I want to talk about that.
Okay. She drives home or gets a taxi home.
I'm about to say.
Yeah. She's not driving. Oh my god, it was loud. So yeah, she goes outside, and the exorcist had told the parents to like burn something that was like important, like find what the issue was, which was the report card, and burn it. And so that is what has happened. They found the report card, and they're burning it in like a little waste bin with like incense and stuff.
Okay, at this point, and I could be reaching, but I kind of hope I'm not. I hope I'm right, because it makes me think even more about this movie. Is the fact that when I saw them burning the report card, I felt like it was the grandmother hiding. Like, I think she somehow had the report card, and the kid killed himself.
I do think that's.
And so she's feeling guilty about it. So she knows more about it. That's why, like, when she said, "Hey, something about the report card," he's like, "No, there's nobody there. Like, they're just messing with you, thinking maybe it's like starting to eat."
I
at her
think
even
you're right
more.
because it's her and the sister doing
Yeah.
this. It's not like both parents are not
Yeah.
there,
Yeah,
and
and
because
they-
they're not there,
and
I'm
they were-
thinking you're right
and
that
they
she's
were also-
doing this without
That
them
was
knowing.
really
Yeah.
weird to see.
Well,
Like,
that was the whole thing, like, because like when she's like, "Don't come near," like you don't want to get the smoke in your eyes.
Yeah, they
Like,
wanna get
didn't
her
want-
away
they didn't-
fast.
Yeah. And then when she looked down, it was already disintegrated. Like
Yeah.
it wasn't visual anymore. And I kept feeling, I was like, I think the grandmother like had a hand in that.
I think
like,
she did.
You know, and which
because
is sad.
because the exorcist
Why,
asked the
though?
Why
parents.
kill yourself for?
Well, no. Well,
but yeah, I think
culture,
yeah,
yeah.
say
But
culture, yeah.
and I'm assuming other things like it's
No,
complicated.
and I think it's a very strict culture.
And
over there.
before, when the exorcist was talking to them, and he was talking to the parents, and he was specifically saying, you need to find what the reason for this was, and he was implying that, like don't you wish you hadn't, like, ignored him, or, like, made such a big deal out of it or something?
Yeah.
Like, he says that to them, and neither of them, like, they don't act defensive. So it's not like, oh, yeah, we did that. So I do think you're right that, like, they actually didn't have anything to do with that. Like, they were surprised by this, and, like, the grandmother had more of a hand in whatever caused this to
That's
happen.
what I was gonna say. Like I just felt like, and if I read that right, kudos, because I feel like that needed to be like some part, because I felt like, why have the random kid looking for his report card? And
Well, it's
had
also
no
because-
ties with anybody.
Because all that
You know?
suicide business will tie in later.
That's what I'm saying.
So-
like, yeah.
So she goes inside and goes up to the elevator, which they have video cameras for, which I've never seen like that, where it's just like, oh, I can see who's inside, so I know if there's anyone creepy.
I have, but this place looks so run down. It wouldn't have been in a place like that.
So she calls the elevator, and when the door opens, she begins to take a step inside, but then she looks over, and there's a dude just like huddled in the corner staring there, and she's like, okay, that's weird. And then she looks up at the video camera, and there's no one in the elevator, and she's like, oh.
that's even weirder.
And I thought that was really cool.
That wrestled my jimmies.
Yeah, and I will say, like, I feel like like the old man who was in the corner. I felt like I started thinking about it, I was like, that's kind of like when you're not being seen and you're just wandering the earth, like you're going to be like kind of going crazy.
Yeah.
And so like she just
Losing more of yourself
Yeah,
every day.
exactly. So like I feel like that's probably how some of them would be. Like, you know, they're just in a corner, you know, like you know, I'm not seen, I'm unheard, you know, whatever. But it also makes for a great horror movie.
It does.
So
Because, so what I like is, I feel like in an American movie, she would have got in. Like, I don't know why I got that vibe. Like, I even, like, was worried for a second that she was going to step into the elevator anyway, and that doesn't happen. So she goes over to the next elevator and, like, gets in. There's nobody inside. She looks in the video camera. There's nobody there. So she gets inside, hits her button, and she's having a good time. We're having a good time.
Doesn't she see the couple go in first, though?
Yeah, and the other one.
yeah.
And the other one, and she notices they go down and everything's fine, right? Okay, sorry. Go
And so she's there, and I love the way the camera just like reveals this because it's like over one shoulder, and then like it cuts back to the numbers, and then it cuts back to her, and like she's like looking down, and she sees in like this slick reflected surface of the elevator like a shape, and she's like, oh fuck, because it's over her shoulder now. It wasn't there before, but it is now, and it's just like this whole elevator ride is intense as fuck, and I love it because the way we know these ghosts works is like they're more angry the more they know you know that they're there, and so the whole time it's like I'm not paying attention to you, I'm not paying attention to you, and it's like, oh, you're paying attention to me.
And the freakiest part is like
He's floating.
he's
He does.
levitating,
That's the
yeah.
greatest part because he starts moving to the side, but it's not like he's stepping to the side. He just like.
Like you can see his,
And you see his feet,
just like dangling.
Oh,
like,
that's
his
so
toes,
cool.
His
I love-
toes are like 2 inches away from the ground, just like gliding behind her, gliding.
And,
And she's
he's
starting
like
to-
dangling. His feet are just dangling there.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
great.
And she's starting to panic, and they're only getting like halfway to where she needs to go, and then he starts to slowly turn, and she's like going, no, and turning, and you see like half of his face, and not the bad part of his face, where he starts like slowly going closer to her, and you're just like right over her shoulder, and it's so good. I love this scene.
Yeah, it's like he's missing like half his skull, like the front of his skull, and I kind of like that because it was shocking because I thought it was just gonna turn around, have like blood just.
This-
dripping.
yeah,
Yeah,
this is
I,
gonna
I
sound
was
stupid.
I was
If it
expecting
was
to see
gorier,
that.
it
Yeah.
wouldn't have been as good.
Yeah, and I felt it was the subtle made it freaky.
It was just like
Like,
an indention in his
ugh,
face. Like it was
did
just
not
like
see that
it was
coming.
like there was like skin over. Like everything was fine except for just like that. There's I don't know.
It's just-
not-
Like,
just-
like a
it's just like a
huge
pa-
concave area.
yeah,
And like the skin
At
grew
his-
over it.
Yeah.
yeah.
and
It was really weird. I've never seen anything like that.
and I feel
before.
like he died a certain way, like either them removing something,
Probably
or-
something to
forced
do with the
trauma?
elevator, since we know that they are like bound to do what they did before.
Yeah, that's true too. Maybe maybe
Yeah.
he was like mugged or something in the elevator or something. and
Blood
died there.
force trauma to the head.
Oh yeah, there you are, bam.
Well,
And so-
the only thing are like the ghosts that are on Earth did a lot of them commit suicide because there seems to be repeats of suicide, or is it all of them or just some? Because the kid, like, did he walk out in front of the bus?
The
They're like, you know what I'm
Well,
talking
he wasn't repeating the thing because that spirit took him
true.
away.
That's true.
The spirits haven't taken these ones away; they're lingering.
Yeah,
and so if they're lingering, does that mean they committed suicide?
I think
and
so.
that- and that's-
the
that's-
specialists were taught.
that's the undertone is that the Grim Reaper's not taking away the suicide people. Like their soul's not at rest.
So then you know that he probably just shot himself in the head.
Oh,
Oh.
yeah.
So like that's what I'm saying though. Like if they're
Boom
just like,
shakalaka.
so like everyone who's still
Case
around
closed.
are just everyone
Yeah.
who's still around they just committed suicide
right.
and they're just
I
lingering.
didn't
And
think
like
about
the
that.
specialist was talking about, like that was the main reason, and then they also said people with unfinished business as well.
Uh-huh.
I guess so.
That
So-
was another one. I was trying to think if they mentioned something else, but those were
So
like
I feel like
Not gonna
the
lie.
woman and her kid earlier could have been like ones with unfinished business.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
they wouldn't have committed suicide.
Right.
But then you kind of wonder: is the woman what's the woman and the son like? The son did commit suicide.
Food
so
poisoning?
you would think his soul would be taken away from the mother.
These things are complicated.
It
It
is.
is
I was
complicated.
just
It really
reading
is,
something
and
the
I-
other day about like
I feel like-
infants who are not like something isn't done with them and they do just go to hell.
In the
Or whatever.
in the Catholic faith, they believe that if you don't baptize your child as the child of Christ, they will go to hell.
Right.
Like 100%. Like if you have a stillborn baby and stuff, it's already in hell.
Right.
You know. So
So I feel like it could have been something like that.
And also, is hell like in this thing is like hell on earth? Is Earth? I mean, sometimes
I said hell. That's not equivalent. Like they don't.
I
In this specific movie, it's not that. It's
I
not
feel-
a hell.
It's
I
just
feel-
afterlife.
I
Right.
don't feel it's
Okay.
hell. I feel they're in purgatory. It's lost. They're lost.
That's the closest equivalent
Yeah.
we can say.
okay.
I really should have done research
And
for
no,
this. I'm sorry.
and this really is like I guarantee, like if we opened up a bunch of their lores and their religion, we'd be like, oh, that's why.
Yep, there you
Oh,
go.
there you are.
It all
Yeah,
makes sense now.
Yeah.
You know.
So now I'm trying. She busts out the door before like she gets to her floor because she runs to like one of the doors and tries to fumble with the key, and then she's like, "Oh shit, I'm not on the right floor." So she runs up the stairs and she runs almost face first into the kid who is all like, "I can't find my report card," and she's like, "Shut up about your report card, I don't know."
And she made him commit suicide.
Yeah,
again.
yeah. She like runs up the hill. She runs up the stairs, looks back and sees him just like casually, just like boop out the window. It's like, well.
So we know that he jumped out the window. He killed
There we
himself
go.
that way.
She screams, runs away, locks herself in her room. Oh, we forgot about a thing.
Oh, go ahead.
Throughout this movie, like when she's been in bed, she's been having these weird visions of like a
Oh,
hospital.
yeah.
Son
And
of
like
a-
seeing her room shift in and out of like another room, and I thought that was a good effect.
Yes.
Like that
It
was like
good for this
that was
time, too.
that was a practical like dissolve of the frame
Yeah.
into another frame,
and
done in a really good way.
And it also shows her like going to like reach the frame. Like you can see a photo frame. Like she's trying to see what's in the photo frame, and as she's grabbing it, she's going through it. It's like it's not there.
She's getting visions of a hospital, of a
hospital,
burned
yeah.
man, of like a squeaky wheel and that sort of thing, and it's very Silent Hilly, and I
It
like
is.
it. So that's been happening throughout the movie,
Yeah.
and so I think this is the point where she like tries to cut herself off from everything, like she refuses to open her
she
eyes.
does. She,
Well, and doesn't the violent thing happen, and then that's when she does, or is that
No,
after?
that
No,
happens
it's just-
after.
That's
yeah.
after. Ah,
Because-
dang it.
because
Because
okay.
she's trying to shut it. Like
She freaks
she
and
re-
is just like locking herself in a room,
Which-
not eating.
Which I have heard people who have went through similar situations where like they were deaf and got hearing or got sight after being blind for so long is like it's just too much for them to take on. So what they'll do
Sensory
is
overload.
Yes, sensory overload, exactly. And so what they'll do is they'll shut themselves off from it. They'll like with the sight, she wears sunglasses. She takes out the bulbs out
In her room.
In her room, she
So
shuts
there's no
the
light?
blinds. Like she's living blind in this room. Like she just wants to shut herself off from.
And so her grandmother and sister are trying to like get to her, but they're not making any progress. So they eventually go to Dr. Lowe, Little Lowe, and he's all like, "I'm gonna."
Little Low.
Well, no, it's because there's an
Yeah,
old Dr.
old
Lowe
Dr.
and a
Lowe.
little Dr. Lowe.
Well,
And they were having like an
you,
argument
you
before.
didn't say father and son, right?
No, they're uncle and
Yeah.
nephew.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's right. Just want to make sure.
Because at some point somebody has the line, it's like, Dr. Lowe and Dr. Lowe, are you related? And he's like, we sure am.
Yeah, 'cause I heard he said like uncle, like because I think when they
Yeah,
had that
so
talk.
yeah, they have an argument where he's like, "You're feeding into her delusions. That's not
Yes.
going to help her." And he's like, "But I really think she's going through something." And he gets called away by someone to be like, "She's having a bad time," and he goes and she's just in her room like playing away at the violin,
Well,
and he's
hold on.
like, "Oh."
that was the whole when they were talking. He was like, "Are you having feelings for your patient?
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
it your patient now?"
And then as he leaves, he's going,
Yeah.
"Yeah,
Yeah,
kind of."
he pretty much says like there's more than just the whole patient
Because they've been
doctor.
talking throughout
Yeah.
this whole thing, and it's,
So you could definitely tell that
it's kind of her first
What's-
friend
what's
it's implied.
yeah, but also at the same time, what's that word when you're
In the friend zone?
No. When you're like macking
when
on your
you're,
patient.
like your
Friend
teacher,
purgatory?
Your teacher doesn't mess with a student. Your doctor doesn't mess with thing. It's something. I forgot the name of it.
I do too, but like,
Oh well, but it's like a moral thing, like or it's like it's a conflict
Unethically?
kind of thing.
I
There it is.
Unethical.
Unethical.
Oh
Booyah! Unethical.
Very different from the friend zone.
I do want to hit on that though. We
Thank
don't
you.
see much of her life before like this operation, but we're never shown any of her other friends. We're never shown like her having like any sort of like social life
Yeah,
outside of her
like,
family.
no
And
blind
so
friends
I feel
or
like
not- she was
she,
definitely
like talking to her psychologist is like the first time she's ever like had actual conversations with somebody that meant anything.
I
Him and Ying Ying.
I agree.
So-
I wish I saw that in this movie.
Anyway,
Next week we're gonna have a new member of the podcast, and Liam's gonna be mysteriously
It
gone.
was worth it.
So he runs off. She's playing the violin pretty frantically, and he's just like, "You got to stop this. It's not helping you, and like you got to get outside and live life." And she's like, "Fuck you." She's not actually like, "Fuck you."
literally, fuck you.
And this is when he takes her. This is when the transition happens when he takes her to like the whatchamacallit, her concert, and she's like her eyes are sealed shut. She's not opening them for anything because she doesn't want to see anything anymore. And I like that because that's like a genuine human moment of like she's so scared to even open her eyes that she doesn't want to anymore. And I like that.
And that's where she also feels like her confidence. Her confidence is blind, pretty much.
Earlier, we forgot about a thing. She went to the hospital to visit Ying Ying right after her surgery, and she's kind of out of it and like not very like her chipper self is not really there anymore. And like she brings like, "Hey, I brought us like a cookie candy sucker thing."
It was like a sucker thing.
And she's like, "I can't really eat that. I'll probably like I won't be able to hold any food down." And she's like, "Oh, but
I'm
we'll
on
hang
chemo
out
right
though."
now.
And it's so sweet,
Yeah,
and I
see,
love it.
This is because I love Ying Ying because it's like it's you're hoping everything goes well for Ying Ying, and of course like it's nice to see that she cares enough to like go out of her way to say, hey, even though I'm not supposed to be back in the hospital.
Yeah, she wasn't just
you know,
telling her
yeah.
that she would hang out with her for the hell of it. She
hell,
actually
yeah.
meant it.
So she's trying to like have this great relationship with her and stuff, and it was very meaningful. But she was like, "Yeah, I'll hold on to your lollipop until you feel better."
And so, now back to the present. Dr. Lowe takes her to like the concert where she plays a little bit and everybody claps. But then like she's kind of been like so pent up in this like ball of stress and anxiety that she just collapses there.
Well, and I feel like at this point, this is when we see the priest heavily exercising.
Yes, as she's doing her concert.
Yeah.
Dude.
Like what was happening is it's implied the grandma and the sister wanted to get her like out of the house so they can do that because they know she's going through some stuff and like it's ghostly involved because she told them that. And so yeah, it's intercutting between her playing the violin and him doing his thing. We never know if it worked. Probably didn't. So yeah, passes out and then she's in the hospital again. And this is where she gets visited by Ying Ying, and they have a nice little talk. And she's like, "No,
And
I
I
can't
knew
play
it.
anymore."
I literally knew it was happening.
When she walks up and then
yes.
like. She Moon understands it, and Ying Ying says bye, and she leaves out the door, passing through it.
And that's when you get like a clearer shot of like the representation of death.
Yeah.
So like that's when I
It's
see
it.
the turtle like up to the ear, and I'm like, wow, that's kind of really weird to look at it because I'm really sad about.
I was
this
gonna say I
moment.
was totally in the moment.
Well,
I didn't.
If you guys haven't got that, yes, Ying Ying passed away. Like
In her
like,
surgery.
Yeah, in her surgery. So you know it's just the ghost of her, and so yeah, it was a very emotional point.
She runs out into the hallway
Yeah.
just to see her pass through another door, and she starts breaking down and crying. And I was just like, "Oh, my feels! It hurts so bad."
and then we see the surgeon.
He comes up and is
Yeah.
all like, "I'm sorry to tell you this." And she's like, "Oh, I know."
I already know.
And that's
yeah.
when he believes. He's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, she couldn't possibly have known that."
Exactly. And so yeah, like I said, the best part of the movie.
It's very it like hits well. Like
It really does. They hit the mark on that.
Some of these moments definitely hit
Lifetime.
me,
a
like
lifetime.
really hard.
Uh-huh.
It was a lifetime movie.
it's a good version
Yes,
of that.
no,
I don't like calling it that because
I hate Lifetime.
Lifetime movies are manipulative. This didn't feel manipulative.
It really is. But okay, go ahead.
And so we cut to their funeral with like her parents, and like they're sitting there and like giving incense into the grave and stuff.
And this part I do like because it's like okay, like I watched this part with like my stepkid and stepdaughter, or my stepson and my stepdaughter, and they were looking at it and they're like, what, why are they throwing those papers? And I said, it's like confetti, like it's a celebration of their life, like so it's kind of like, you know, like instead of strictly mourning their dead, they're celebrating also because she's been through like 20 something surgeries. You know, it's also, you know, it's kind of a relief in a way. Not like, hey, we're glad Ying Ying's gone, but at the same time, it was like she suffered so much. So I felt like that.
It's a really good scene because, and then after that, she, Moon and Dr. Lowe are like sitting and talking, and again we were talking about like the beauty of life and how like Ying Ying showed her that like there like it was just a pure soul that like wanted good for everyone, and it was an awesome thing. And then we cut to them on the train, and Dr. Lowe gives her a letter that Ying Ying made for her, and it had the picture that they took back when they were both in the hospital. And Moon is like, I think she put the wrong picture in this. And he's like, what are you talking about? And she's like, well, that's not me. And then he looks at her and is like, you must not be like used to your face yet, because obviously she doesn't know what her face looks like. And he's like, yeah, that's you. And then
So we
she's
get
like,
the frantic scene of
Yeah.
her going through her apartment.
she's like, what are you talking about? That's me. And she goes home, like looks in the mirror, and we see like a different actress, a different character, like looking back out of it. And we're just like, oh,
So
that's
we're
not.
like at this point, I'm assuming that
She's been
this
seeing
is-
someone else the whole time.
Yeah, it was the person whose eyes she has is probably she's seeing that vision of her.
I definitely did not see that coming.
You did not? Oh my
Hey,
gosh.
hey! Out of all these movies,
Uh-huh.
this is the only movie I can use eye puns with.
Oh my
We'll
So
get- we'll
I
get-
gotta
we'll find
get,
another.
I gotta keep cashing
about-
in on this before we get back to ask him a question.
Ugh.
Hey, you brought that one.
I did. I started this. This is my fault.
I do love some puns, but
I actually did like this scene.
I really like
this-
when the mirror is cracked and she like stands up and is seeing like the other faces like
Yeah.
looking back at her.
I thought that was a brilliant what is it? Directorial or like direction for the camera
Yes.
or
Now,
whatever.
I think the Americanized version did this, but not barely as well.
Well, I remember a part around this time where she was like in a bathroom, like looking at her eyes, like blah, what's going on with you?
Yeah.
Because now she knows it's definitely the eyes that are
Yeah.
doing this.
Now I'm curious to see what the American remake how it is compared.
You know
to
how this movie was scary?
Yeah.
That one's not.
Oh really?
Okay. Well,
It somehow takes the same premises of the scares and makes them not work.
See,
Really?
My
Yeah.
thing
Okay.
is like, and see, and I'm not such on the fence about things. Like, I have people that I know, no names, but that have said
Dave.
have said stuff like, well, oh, the this version's better, and I feel like they tell me that just because that's the odd way of saying it. Like, or like, you know, I want to be one out of 100 people that say this one's better.
Okay,
you
but
know, or
this
whatever.
isn't like a 1
Yeah.
out of 100 thing.
No, I
With
know.
most Asian horror movies, people will agree that
Yeah.
like The Grudge, Dark Water, the not The Ring.
Not the ring.
Uh,
that
Godzilla.
one gets the push.
What?
Godzilla.
Fuck you.
Why you gotta do this to us?
So I think from there she like
I thrive on
confides in Dr. Lowe and is like, we need to find out who this woman was that like the corneas came from. And I don't think anything happens in between them like getting on the bus and like driving off to like they figure out she was in Thailand somehow. I don't remember how.
Oh, little Dr. Lowe went to High Dr. Lowe.
And was all like, give me the
And-
records. And
yeah,
he was like,
and
it's
he's,
confidential.
he
but
was-
then now
he was
that he
like-
believes,
Like,
So,
High Dr.
was
Lowe
that
is like,
going from-
man, this is extremely unethical. And he's
Yep.
like, yep, I know. He's like,
So I think it's like because we see him in Hong Kong, right? And then I think this is when we see him in Singapore, probably.
and I think they say Thailand. They
Is
say
it
Thai
Thailand?
multiple
yeah,
times.
no,
maybe it's
I
You
saw
said they
Thailand.
were they filmed in Singapore.
Oh,
you said.
okay. So that's probably where I get it mixed up.
Yeah,
So,
it was
so
Thailand.
this was another fun uncomfortable thing where they were driving along in the bus and there was like a burnt out wreck and then there was just this dude on fire that just
Fire,
runs
dude.
by
And
and
that
it was just like
She,
That was
didn't
so
really
out
flinch.
of the
She was
blue,
just
I
like,
jumped.
All right, that
Well,
just
you
happened.
see so much of that shit that you're just kind of like
You-
immune to it after
yeah,
a
you
while.
get a progression with her because at
Yeah.
first she's like confused, then she's like scared out of her wits, and now she's just like, oh yeah, ghosts.
It's just kind of a thing now.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Burning Man Festival.
And I really like that
Well,
because a lesser movie would have her like at one level the entire movie.
Yeah.
And so they get to this hospital. It's a nice little place, and they're like speaking English for a little while because they don't know Thai.
I literally was like, have I watched this so long now I'm starting to understand it?
Sydney mentioned this with Troll Hunter, where
Yeah,
it's like in
yeah,
other
with the- with
countries,
the
it's like
Polish
if
brothers.
you don't know how to talk to each other, you use English.
And that was the thing. They were like, "Oh, you speak Mandarin," and so they went back to the speaking.
Right,
fucking Mandarin.
later when the other doctor
Oh,
shows
I
up.
guess that is true. That's
But
true.
first, as he's trying to like figure out who the doctor was that like worked on the corneas
yeah.
and like shipped them off, she like peers into another hallway and sees that it's the hallway that she was seeing in her dreams, and like seeing the burn patient like push down the wall, and she's like, okay, we're in the right place. I know because I've seen this place before. Weirdly,
Do
I've
you
seen
ever
you
get those
before.
weird feelings?
huh? Yeah.
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 Okay,
Yeah, all
cool.
the time.
I'm not the only
Yeah.
one. Whew. Oh really? That's like one of my favorite songs from Initial D.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh my
Deja vu. I've just been in this place before. High on the street, and I know my tongue. No,
I've seen
We're
that
getting
meme
shut
too many times.
We're getting shut down.
So yeah, she's like, okay, we know we're on the right track. The doctor comes down, and then he's like, oh, you speak Mandarin, right on. And he seems amiable until it's like, oh, this is the person we're looking for, and her name was Ling, and he's like, oh, fuck you, I'm not going to tell you a dang thing.
Yeah.
And then she's like, well, no, wait, we need this.
Yeah.
And like she eventually says, like, comes out and flat out says, it's like, I've been seeing things ever since this transplant has happened. And he's like, oh.
Which I thought, at first, because of course later on I understand why he jumped to that.
Uh-huh.
At first I was like, that's all it took? I'm seeing weird
Well,
stuff with the eyes you
No,
gave me.
it's
But
because
but
he
Weird
was like
flex,
knew this
but
as a
okay.
thing.
he knows
Because
the past
yeah,
of the
as
other girl.
as he's leading them to the parents or the mother of who Ling. I don't know if we said this. Ling is the person the eyes came from.
Yeah.
He's talking about it's like, oh yeah, when I was a kid, I threw rocks at her because we all thought she was like a weirdo and like a bad omen and a curse.
Yeah, they call
Yeah.
her a witch.
Yeah, they call her all sorts of things.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And he's basically like, she would like cry in front of people's doors, and then a day later they would die, and people thought it was her bringing it on them rather than her being like a warning, like because like she knows the bad thing is about to happen. And so they find the mother, who is very like somber and like doesn't talk much, and he lays out the whole story, and we see a bunch of flashbacks that really made me feel sad for this girl.
That's what I was gonna say. I actually felt like other than Ying Ying, this part I was like, I really feel bad because they made her a monster. Like they oust her. Like it showed her like playing with other girls.
Yeah,
her
you follow her
age.
from like a child up to an adult.
Yeah, and then like older parents like, oh, don't play with that witch. Leave her alone. Don't talk to her. Like
The parents are crueler to her than the kids
I
are.
know, it's so sad. And so I was kind of like, man, no wonder this girl had a tough life.
And like it like, and we see a few times where what you talked about happened, like some boy drowned in the river, and then like people were dragging her out, and they're like, it was you that brought this on this, and like pushing her away, and like she doesn't understand. And like it even happens when she's an adult, like with her mom and stuff. And eventually we're told that at some point she had like a supervision where she saw like a lot of people dying, and she was running around from house to house like banging on the door trying to get them like, you have to leave now, this is a bad thing is about to happen. And apparently like 300 people died in like an extreme fire. And then after this we're told that like because she was so guilty that she couldn't stop this, she committed suicide. And it's like, oh, that's how it ties back in, because her soul hasn't like is trapped in this like cycle now too. And so
well, and I feel like, I don't know if they were trying to go with this, but like I felt like the reason like the eyes were a main part, like Seer's eyes or whatever, is that they were like the windows to the soul kind of thing. So I felt like that they were trying to touch
like her soul was like escaping through her.
Yeah.
And so Moon says like, hey, can I stay the night and we'll try to figure this out? And she's like,
I
okay.
thought this was the weirdest thing too. I was like, you couldn't pay me enough.
Oh, right. because when she gets up to the bed, the like little wrapping of what Ling used to hang herself is still around one of the beams.
I thought that was weird. But then you kind of know, because of the culture, you find out that the mother just didn't want
she didn't want
anything to do with it.
She viewed it as like Ling leaving her.
Yeah,
like
you did this to yourself.
Later on,
really sad.
I really like the line later where she says it's like, I didn't leave. I like was by you every step of the way. I never gave up on you, and you gave up on yourself. And it was like, that hurts.
And it's so true. But and see, the thing is, like, suicide is very serious, and I don't believe like God dumps you into hell. Like I have to believe that that's not the truth of it. But there is a lot of cultures that believe that, and I felt like that they were touching it on this, but also this is the part where she's laying in the room and we realize
it's the same room.
It's the same room. Like the pictures that she saw that she couldn't touch in her own.
So
room.
she's been living this like dual life of Ling at the same time, and she sees the vision of her hanging herself, and then she like has all this happen, and then she runs down to the mother and being like, okay, in order for this to like end, in order for like Ling to pass on, like you need to like go up there with me and like we work through this and like fix it. And she's like, no, I'm not gonna go up there. And so then
and this part, like I don't know, because like in Christianity, like they talk about like that at 3:00 in the morning and it's the witching hour,
Uh-huh.
which is a mockery of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Right.
But with the Chinese or Hong Kong or whatever their dialect over there is, I feel like I think they practice like Buddhism. Is that
Buddhism, yeah.
Yeah.
Buddhism,
Okay. So
yeah.
I don't know if that's what this
Predominantly. not
predominantly.
only.
Yeah, and it could be like Hindu. I don't know. But what I'm saying is, I don't know if they intentionally made 3 a thing for them.
I know in Japan 4 is the bad number. I don't know what it
Okay.
is in China or
China.
Hong
Really?
Kong. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because their word for 4 sounds a lot like their word for death, so the two are
Okay.
kind of linked.
Okay. So I didn't. When I heard 3, I was kind of like, oh, is that the witching hour?
Yep.
But then I was like, oh, they probably didn't even notice that. They probably
Well,
just,
you never
it just
know.
happened at
Like
3.
culture bleeds together sometimes.
Yeah.
Well,
It's-
I thought that 3 o'clock, because 3 o'clock is the time where she's reliving it. I thought she just killed herself at 3 o'clock.
she did.
She
yeah.
did.
No, no,
She
It,
did.
it could just be
It-
like both. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
It's pretty much what we've come to find out is that at 3 o'clock every night, even before they showed up, is she's reliving her suicide.
Because
just like
as they're
the
both
boy.
downstairs, you hear the chair move,
Yeah.
and Moon is like, "You've heard that every night for like the past several years,
Exactly.
haven't you?" And
Yeah,
she's like, "Yes."
Yes, and she's like, but I'm not going up there. I'm not helping you. I'm not whatever. And I feel like I don't know if it was a way of them trying to like make a statement,
Mhm.
but I felt like it was saying like, hey, all you need is forgiveness.
I feel like it was because
Yeah.
eventually she goes back up there and starts
Uh-huh.
replaying it out herself. Like she becomes locked in this and begins to hang herself. And eventually the mother is like, "No, I'm coming for you." Like she calls her like,
yeah.
"Mommy's coming," and then she gets up and like grabs her and like helps her down, and it's all very touching. Gives me feels.
Which and
Yeah,
I did
I
get
was-
the feels. I did get the feels there.
I was
'Cause
getting super sad.
just because like
almost
I
about
kept
to-
thinking it's like this person who has been called a witch, ridiculed, like thrown stones at, like just pretty much getting spit on, and yet she finally gives up her life, because she just can't take it no more. And yet the only thing that mattered the most was her mother, and her mother turned her back on her too. So it was like, ugh.
It's also great because like this girl, even with that like childhood and being like hated by the people, is like she never like gave up on them either. She always tried to like
Save
warn them and save
Yeah.
them, and got like no appreciation for it whatsoever. But that didn't stop her, and that makes me like her as a character, even though she's like not in this movie except for.
Yeah, this part was great.
Uh-huh. And like as the mother's holding Moon, it pans down and it's not her face, it's Ling's face that slowly like transforms into Moon after the mother forgives her and says, "I was like, I'm always gonna be here for you," and then it's like, oh,
Yeah, and I felt like that was, and then that was like they were trying to say something like forgiveness goes a long ways, like because the thing is like I do believe that there is like spirits that wander the earth because they feel like something wasn't done right, or they missed out on something, and I feel like that was a perfect way of doing it. But it also, like, at that point, it reminded me of, like, not to give into another spoiler of a foreign movie, but like The Ring, where they finally take her out and bury her, and you're thinking, oh, like, this is all great.
But in The Ring, it's a very different thing
Yeah.
because in Japan, their ghosts are assholes. Like I don't want to be like mentioning that, but like no, it's true. Like we in a lot of our ghost stories, there are ways to appease the ghosts to pass them on. In Japan, it's very like their ghost stories. They get angrier and angrier at everyone around them, regardless of what happens, and you can't stop them.
Wasn't there a ghost story in Japan where it's like you walk some pathway and then there's a lady wearing like one of those face masks?
Oh,
and
that
it's like, do you
Fujisaka
think
Onna?
I'm pretty? And then
Yep.
like she has
You
like
have
that
to say
mouth
something
woman.
specifically.
Yeah, like
If you
she's
say-
a dick.
if you say-
that's safe to say.
If you say she's pretty, she kills you. If you say she's not pretty, she kills you. Your only hope is to say, you're all right. And then she's
you're
like,
all right.
huh, I've never actually heard anyone tell me that before. And then you run away.
just kind of like she just pushes your face and goes, now go away.
Top 10 real life ghosts. There's a story. There's a list
Oh.
for you. That'd be fun.
Top 10, we'll do 5.
Spoiler alert.
There's so many cool ghosts though.
I know.
So
Then we'll have to tell the whole story of
Right.
why we like that ghost. Maybe
a lot of ghosts are really quick though.
Yeah, you can just do a quick summary.
Okay.
So after this, it's like, that's done. We solved it. Yay. And then we're driving home, and this is where the climax happens. And you've all told me your feelings about this beforehand.
is the-
And I sort of agree with you. It kind of is like a big
This is the
action scene out of nowhere.
dumbest thing in the movie.
I like the setup for it a lot, because she's been seeing the Grim Reaper, like, we could calling them that, that's probably not what they're called, but like the figures of death.
We could call them.
I want to say the Grim Reaper because it's technical what it's doing. It's kind of like it's a figure who's taking his soul to the other side. Like, why are you guiding me? You're the Grim Reaper.
So they're on the bus. They're on the bus. They're in this like huge traffic jam. She's asleep and like no, he's asleep and she's like just pondering around looking. And then she sees one of the things pass by and she's like, And then she sees several of the things pass by and she's like, And then she sees a constant stream of these things passing by. And I like that as a setup. That's a cool idea that like knowing these things exist. It's like okay, a disaster is about to happen.
I felt like this was neat. I didn't have a problem with this part.
See, I didn't have a problem with it either. Honestly,
I'll tell you why. Because I felt like I'm tired of these damn movies where it's like like you know how like they just finally got rid of her cycling, her committing suicide. Mm-hmm. They laid her to rest. Then it's happily ever after. No, we need to know that it doesn't just stop there. Like
death is still going to happen.
Death is still going to happen. Your eyes are still going to still work because this is what they did.
You can't stop it.
I was gonna be okay with like an ending where like they end at like the Ling's tombstone and then like she sees another spirit and just like
they do go to Ling's tombstone like to let her like
and I thought that was like a beautiful scene and like that would definitely mix well with I
like the actual ending more that happens after this scene, but we'll talk about that later.
Sorry,
no, you go first.
The only thing I was gonna say is like the previous scene, I thought that they were kind of showing a benefit to having this power because like she does get to help Ling move on, and I thought that was a benefit because then she can figure out what the problem is and she can kind of like help, like she can help in some way.
A benefit in some way, but like I'm glad this didn't become the Ghost Whisperer, where it's like every time I see death imminent, I could be like, no.
Well, no, like I'm not expecting it to be like but like you've seen so many bad things that happen. I was expecting now, like, because after that happened, it seems more of like a positive more than negative. So then you go straight back to negative again.
I want negative. I feel like that's the best movies is because like I feel like I'm tired of these like safe endings like we live happily ever after.
Death?
We do not live happily ever after.
Death is inescapable.
Well,
yes,
no,
exactly.
I'm not expecting it to be happily ever after.
Dude, I'm not gonna lie. If they would have ended it before the very ending scene, I would have. This movie wouldn't even probably get a 5.
I was wanting an ending much like The Exorcist. You know,
where she jumps out of the window.
No, not
spoilers.
You're editing that part out.
Oh yeah, because the people listening to the horror podcast haven't watched The Exorcist.
Where it's like they acknowledge there's both good and evil, and like the girl's okay now, but like they're at like a great cost. Mm-hmm. So I was wanting an ending much like that, where it's like it fits in with the theme that there's beauty and also like disgusting things.
So we haven't actually talked about the ending.
Yeah,
we see that river of people go by, and she's like, "Oh shit, something's about to go down." And way at the head of the traffic jam, there's a toppled over. It's not like a gas truck. It's like filled with gas or something because later it shows the gas. Must be or something.
It's a gas truck.
And
you can say natural.
I will agree with one thing. They do really try to hit it home with like, "Oh, here's a newly wedded couple. Oh, here's like a child looking at the window. Oh, here's a newborn babe."
Here's a little rat.
Here's a baby.
Granted, they did that, but at the same time, like
I would have toned that down.
Yeah, I would have toned it down too. But at the same time, I think they were just showing you that
the breath of life.
Yeah, it was like life.
Yeah.
Like it's not just man and woman, kid, man, woman. Yeah. It's like this person just did this, or this person's whatever. Like you get to see a story without the story. Mm-hmm. And I think
every car has its own little mini story going on.
And which is sad because it's like this is going to be your end of your chapter.
So what happens is she starts running out and like banging on all the windows like you have to get out, you have to run now, and then it's cutting back to when Ling was doing that with like her people and like they didn't listen then, and the people now don't listen either.
This is why they thought she was a witch, because now you're starting to see the fact that she has premonitions of these people's deaths, and she's trying to warn them, but they're not listening. They think it's just her being a crazy
I-
person.
This is the biggest change in the remake, but I guess we don't want to talk about
no,
that.
no,
so.
let's-
Yeah,
please
no,
don't.
but the thing is like she's banging
Leave it
on
alone.
she's banging on some of the windows, and they literally just can't hear her. And I know that she's frantic and everything, but I wish
But-
that they would have just cut to like everyone hearing her and just like purposely, like everyone hearing her and then purposely ignoring her.
But at the same time, they kept. One of them said, "I don't understand it," and I think what it is the fact that there was a. Remember how they were saying, "Oh, do you speak Mandarin? Are you like?"
Yeah,
there
where
was
were they at this
were,
point?
They
Yeah,
were in
I don't know,
They were on
but-
the way back, so they're in the middle.
Yeah, maybe they were still in
Yeah,
Thailand.
they were probably still in like Thailand or on the outskirts of Thailand or something, to the point where it's like there was a dialect difference, because it is like it's night and day at certain parts of that country.
I was
I
gonna say
guess-
for this particular thing, either way, like whether they were back in Hong Kong or whether they weren't, like whether
But-
they listened or
but-
didn't
Exactly.
doesn't super change my feelings
okay, how
on the
would you-
situation.
know.
If somebody came up to you and just started banging on your window and stuff, would you open up the door or
No,
do
I would
anything?
creak the window and say,
Yeah, no,
"Howdy, neighbor."
No, I would
Howdy,
not.
Fred.
I would be
Howdy,
like, go away.
I have straight
Leave
up
me alone.
no. I have straight up had someone frantically knock on my window trying to figure something out, and I rolled down my window a little bit and asked
see.
if they were okay and if
You know,
I need to call the police.
You know, someone could have easily got in with just the crack of a window.
Well, my car was in drive. I could just drive away.
So-
but like,
Maybe.
oh my
Having
God.
had this
And they-
discussion-
and they did need help, and I did call the police for them. So
Having
yes.
this discussion now, I would, like, in my own headcanon, whatever, I would say this, like, oh, they're probably still in Thailand or what have
Yeah,
you. So
I
they,
think so.
like, literally don't understand her.
And to
Maybe,
be honest,
yeah.
I understand what you're saying, because I am that person. I think of stuff like that, but at the same time, like, I try to justify it for a movie. Like, I'm trying to say, okay, the reason why is this.
Here-
I
Like,
very often try to
Here's-
work in favor of the movie rather
Yeah.
than saying, like, taking it at face value and saying, oh, well, that's dumb.
yeah,
Well,
And I'm not saying that's what you're doing. Right, yeah.
Totally
but
what you're
here's
doing.
No,
I'm just
no,
joking.
it's not.
rude. Here's number 2 though. They know that this is propane and that they're all freaking out, but they're also letting cars drive by. You know how like they're all start. I don't think that
They
would
don't
happen.
think they.
I don't think so.
Are they?
I don't think there was even they noticed a leak or anything, because they were just saying, don't stay there, like stay back until they
Okay.
Oh yeah, and
because
and
they
see
didn't
that.
want somebody to hit it. They didn't want somebody to spark
But I
something.
could have
Also-
sworn they were moving people
Well,
to the side.
well, here's
but-
the other thing. This probably just like very recently happened. Like this hasn't been
That's
the
true,
situation
too.
for an hour, and because it just recently happened, and because of the like immense traffic in places like this, like there
it
isn't
is.
really
It truly is.
there isn't the option of backing up because like
I-
okay, we have cars going back for like
I've
5
seen-
miles.
Try
I've
turning-
We can't
I've
go back to
literally-
them and say
I've
like,
literally
hey.
been to
Try turning
countries
left
where-
in New York, I
where
dare
it's- It's so concentrated, the traffic.
So they
someone
either have
breaking
to
down-
sit or go that like
Exactly.
side path.
Okay.
So I guess I could relate to that too. It's like the fact is like when you're stuck, you're stuck. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts. You're just stuck there.
So she's trying to do this.
Yeah.
Dr. Lowe sees her and he like runs out because he believes he knows this is real now. So he's running out because he assumes that something horrible is about to happen. And that's when the leak starts coming out from the gas tank or the propane tank or whatever. We see like the waves wafting out across like the entire like area, and then we see like. The line does start to move, so then the bus driver guy is all like, oh, the line's starting to move because he had his bus off because he was trying to save gas, and so when he turns it on, the ignition causes a spark which lights everything up, and there's a massive explosion. We see a lot of people die.
Literally everyone that was all happy and having a good old time, everyone just burned.
Which I feel like this is their budget right here.
Oh, yeah.
And so I feel like we needed it in a way, just for the simple fact is I don't like the whole like happily ever after ending. I like to know that hey, it's inevitable. Like it was going to happen. Like something like she's going to continue.
I have
being a-
complicated feelings about this that I'll talk to you
Okay.
with like other movies because
Okay.
I sometimes in horror movies do like happy endings, and when they throw in that like useless stinger at like the last 5
Well,
seconds
no.
of the movie, those I don't like.
I don't know useless stingers. Yeah, those.
If it's like a hard fought victory, I like it when the hero
'Cause I
does
feel
get
like-
out.
Because the reason I say I feel like this was important is because where it leads her back to at the end, which keep
Mm-hmm. Right.
going.
So she was trying her best, but it like no one left, and so like the explosion's coming at her. Dr. Lowe like grabs her and like pushes her down, but not before like a bunch of glass just like shreds her eyes again, and they both like collapse to the ground. And this time there's bruises and blood on her eyes.
Yeah.
So
Which I thought.
Yeah.
I thought I only got one of her eyes though.
No, I got
But-
both.
It got
Really?
both.
Okay.
Well, okay, like we were talking about the remake before, and you said it's in the trailer
Yeah.
where it's like
Yeah.
they do a better job in the remake where it shows like the amount that was like
Yeah.
hitting
Like,
her in the
it
face.
was like,
Okay.
and it was clear projectile glass. Like in this, in the one we saw, they had it looked like a strap metal.
Yeah,
like there was
only-
a
It
metal
wasn't
strap.
just like, it wasn't just like a
tiny
wall
thing.
of it. It
Yeah.
was just like a few pieces here.
So,
and there.
Yeah.
and
But
I-
you could assume that the same basic thing that happened in the remake happened here, where she just got a face full.
which I felt like this is the like I felt like it was needed to be done because like it's the whole storytelling. Like it's like one person's beauty. We see beauty because we're so used to seeing. But
we're also used to the misery.
exactly with the misery that comes with it. With her, it was like a total shock,
Mm-hmm.
and it's been nothing but like depression for her.
Because it
in a
seemed
way.
like she lived a very sheltered life before
exactly.
this.
Well, dude, she had no friends or anything.
Yeah. So like this
technically-
was her like experience the whole breadth of
Literally,
humanity.
the best thing that came out of her eyes was the fact that she met the doctor.
Yep.
That's it.
And Ying.
Yeah,
That
well,
like
yeah.
that like changed her perspective on
Yes.
things. And so yeah, like they go down, we fade to black, and then when we come back, like
She's with the walking
we
stick.
well first we see like
Oh.
the carnage, but that's like whatever.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, and so it does come back, and she has the walking stick, and she's having a little bit of monologue about this again, that like losing the sight wasn't the worst thing that it could have happened to her, and
And I felt like that was the thing. It was the fact that like it was never going to get good for her. You know.
I just
they
didn't-
don't like it.
I didn't like it. I didn't like the ending, and I don't know if it was.
I'm not saying I love the ending. I was just saying the fact that like I felt like why it needed that scene because like it needed to be something to show that like even though she buried the person that she had the eyes with, it wasn't the fact that she was out of the woods on it.
Yeah.
No, the ending. I hate those endings. Like the ending, how it ended, it drove me nuts.
I don't.
In other endings, not this one.
No,
Right.
this ending.
Oh, it did. I thought.
Like
Oh.
no, with the doctor and her loving happily
Because
ever after.
okay, this is the first thing, and actually, Liam was watching the end of it when I got here, and the first.
Yeah,
You
that's
just want to keep watching it.
Procrastinator.
sorry.
No, I was watching the ending again, so I'm just the point I'm getting is I watched it twice, and so like he gets the ending and they look at each other and I'm like, well, at least you got some man candy out of the deal. And I
That's
don't
not
wanna,
fair.
And I don't want to think that though.
She got a real human connection that she didn't have before. Like someone who was going to talk to her, who's going to believe her and listen to her, and she's not had that in her life at this
great.
point.
That's great. That's great for
And I
her.
felt, yeah. And
So Haley is basically like, fuck this bitch.
Well, it's great that she has a friend. It looks more like a love interest to me.
Oh, no, yeah, that's what I meant.
But like not really a
but
friend.
But see, and yeah, I did dislike the ending of that. But here's my question to you: how would you have ended? Because like
With
this
her
movie-
becoming a ghost hunter.
no, because like
Somewhere around
No,
there.
no, no.
Absolutely
not.
no.
In other horror
but if you think
franchises, yes,
about
but
it-
in this, no.
Because if you think about it, this movie tells a story about a person who received the eyes and then her journey with those eyes. And once the eyes are gone, where are you supposed to go with this movie? So I felt like it's the best they could
Well,
do.
okay, once the eyes are gone, where do you go? And if she has the eyes, where do you go? It's like, is she just going to go around and like try to start saving people?
I can't come up with like
I
a
feel she had
master.
to lose
Like
the eyes.
living an ordinary life the way she wanted it to be, and then like you just show a spirit in the background, she's just like, "Bup," and then just.
It's
walks
just
back.
kind of...
But she couldn't do that because of the person she is. If she sees someone in trouble, she's going to help, and it's going to get her killed eventually if that had happened.
Then we could end it like that.
I wouldn't have liked
Well,
that.
and it just
I
like,
would. It would have
wouldn't
been
have
way
liked that.
better than propane.
No.
like the feeling I get, and again, this has to do with the same music from the beginning. And it to me, like, I know that she's happy that she has this new boyfriend or whatever, but it just seemed like, and I know you're not supposed. I just after you go through that and you're just like, this traumatic event and everything, she just seems so. I don't.
I'll tell you later after this.
Oh,
Okay, I just thought
God.
of something.
Oh, okay. It's nothing wrong with. Okay.
No.
She
Oh.
just she just seemed like so like, oh, everything's great again. I don't know why. I just felt,
Uh-huh.
and it might have been the music. It might have been. It just
know.
kind of seemed like a happily
all
ever.
this
It
time.
felt like a happily ever after
know,
ending.
you-
I know it
you
wasn't.
guys-
It was
but
Come
to
on,
me.
give
It
me
was
the mask.
bittersweet. Like, I don't know. I can't explain it other than that. It's bittersweet. Like, she doesn't get to be a ghost hunter. She doesn't get to like live the perfect normal life. She gained and she lost. She's grown. She's changed.
Well, and like I said, I thought what they were going with that the explosion scene is that maybe she would get at least one person saved.
Mm-hmm.
Like I thought that maybe
But
like
see, that was the beauty of it because the fact is she couldn't save anybody. The original girl, she couldn't save anybody before. Is because no one wants to believe in the supernatural. They don't want to
And
believe.
it's all about cycles.
Yeah, and honestly,
So
there-
the same thing that
there
happened to her
was-
happened to Ling and will happen to the next person that
There
has
was
this.
a time.
It
There was
sucks,
a
but-
time, and maybe it is part of our time now. But like, there was a time where if you brought up something like that was like foretold of a future, and it pans out to be true, they'll kill you because or whatever. So
The
I
devil
think-
magic.
So I think
Worse!
I think a lot of people it's like they don't want to believe in that either because if they believe in that, then their religion or their views are different than what it would.
What
be.
is being presented
Yeah.
to them.
I guess for me, I thought that
Like
they
if
were.
if someone came up to Liam's house and we opened up the door and said, "Hey, you got to get out of the house because I heard or I saw like a vision of your house exploding," Liam would probably be like, "What the fuck are you talking about?"
Well,
like he wouldn't be like,
I'd-
"Are you serious?"
I'd probably be like, "Sure, bro, let's go."
It might have been the organization of it too, because I just thought that they were.
Yeah.
I thought they were going in the direction because once they save, like Lane gets to move on. I thought that they were starting to go more positive, and then they go right back to negative again, and it just kind of threw me
Well,
off.
that and also you got to think with the culture over there, they're very overpopulated. So they're probably always getting hounded for people from like food to money to everything. So they probably keep blind eyes to those people that like come up to them and say, "Hey, like frantically doing something to them." They're like, "No, like just hey." So what,
Well,
weirdo?"
it just it just kind of threw me off.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting it. I'm not saying that it's like all bad, and I get what they were going for. I just like the scene after that. I wish it would have had kind of the same tone almost because I didn't like it was just those last three scenes. They're so different. The tones are very
Don't you have absolutely?
very different, and
Okay,
I'm not saying that's all bad. It just threw me off, and I couldn't get into it 100%. Like and again, I'm sure a big part of it is just I'm not used to those types of movies, and so
oh my gosh.
and
Okay.
that might be part of it.
I was literally thinking when you were talking, like maybe this was their first movie or something or whatever. This is their second movie. The first movie was in 1999, Bangkok Dangerous. Do you guys remember that? That was
The
them.
original, not the Nick Cage one.
No, it's the original one. But what
Yeah.
I'm saying is like for them to go from that to like 3 years later to The Eye, like for them to write the script to direct it, I think they did phenomenal. Like for like if this was their 25th movie, I'd be like, okay, you're right, man. They like fucking dropped the ball a little bit on this, maybe a little. I'm sorry, Jesse, because you won't be disappointed with my rating.
No. Well, like
Like
again, it's one of those things where it's like we're looking at the movie and what the directors and writers set out to do.
Yeah.
And it's like this was a damn scary movie to me at least, and like it's one of those where I've been listening to what everyone is saying, and I feel like the ending very much comes down to personal preference. It's not like a math equation where it's like, oh, you should have done this or that or something. It's just like this is what you like, this is what I like, and I personally don't have an issue with how the ending played out. Personally.
Okay.
Also, the movie's over, so
Okay.
Roll credits.
So we're at it says an hour and 32 minutes. So I guess any other like thoughts that you guys were thinking? What'd you guys think about?
I think we hit on our thoughts really well as we went.
I thought so too. So we'll do the ratings, and of course your last because this was your pick.
Yay!
So what rating out of 10, and why you would give that rating, Liam?
I mean, 6 out of 10, and I would probably like give it a different rating if I watched this movie like a second time and learn more about the culture and learn more about like this movie. I want to know more and then see it a second time and see if that changes my
There are
personal views.
sequels.
Yeah,
That there are.
I heard
I want to see them and see if they get worse.
What were you gonna say?
I heard it was the I2 and then
And
the
the I-
third, 10.
Yep. We skipped a bunch.
Yeah.
Wait, there are 10?
No,
No.
the third one was called I-10.
I-10?
Yeah, I have no idea. I think it's half of 2020. I have no idea. Okay.
I've started watching I2. I haven't seen it all the way through.
Okay.
I know,
It has one of my favorite actresses, so
which one?
like she's like Chinese. You probably wouldn't. Shu Kuai.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I only know Knives
I
Child.
probably said it wrong. I'm sorry.
Cry, hush, hush, I don't want... No.
Are you serious?
There you go.
But yeah, 6 out of 10. This movie is really terrifying. Do like it, like the elevator scene, what you doing in my chair, but most importantly, the old lady in the hospital. That was the one that got me like the most out of all of them.
I literally
What
went
noise was she
like in
making?
bed. Meow.
6 out of 10 to me.
Okay. For me, and I was really thinking about a good number for it, and I was leaning towards 6, but then I think I finally rested at a 7. Just because 7 out of 10, I feel like it's one of those movies that I would revisit again, and kind of like how Liam said, look more about the culture to see if I like picked up more about it, especially about the candle thing. Like I don't know if the candle thing was something. But and then of course like I also was kind of questioning the thoughts of open flames in like apartment building hallways. I thought that was kind of weird, but yeah, whatever. But I feel like it's one of those movies that like I personally had some likes, especially the spooks parts. It's not a movie I would go out of my way to tell people you must watch this, but it would be a movie where if someone brought it up and asked if they should watch it, I'd say yeah, you should definitely probably give it a spin. It's like it's freaky. Like it holds up for especially being a movie that's like 16 years or so. I think it's great like for that, and it's a foreign movie, so But
I'll stop doing that eventually.
Please stop this foreign stuff for a while.
No.
No. Okay.
You will read your movies.
So I think this is actually my first Chinese horror movie I've ever seen. I'm pretty sure because
I'm trying to think if it might be mine too.
I have a really long list. You'd be surprised.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty because I've seen a lot of Korean horror movies and I've seen a lot of Japanese horror movies, but I don't think I've seen a lot of Chinese horror movies. So this will be my first one. I think I had more likes than dislikes overall. And there were definitely some things like when we talked about, I was like, okay, like, it makes sense. And it made me like it at least a little bit more. I still am not a huge fan of the transitions. Mm-hmm. I just think it threw me off just a little bit. And I still don't like the ending very well. But besides those two things, I thought everything else was pretty great. So I'd probably give it about a 6 out of 10.
You're staying above 5, man.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I would give it a 6 out of 10. And I think most of that is the scares, and because that's like the best part of it. And then the parts that are supposed to make you really sad, when you go to like just a lot of those dramatic stories. I thought those were all pretty great. So that's why it's a 6 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, so this was my pick. So as you can imagine, I probably like this movie, and you'd be right. I'm going to buck the trend, and I'm going to say 8 out of 10 for me personally. Like, I have no major flaws with this movie. The ending doesn't bother me, and this movie does a lot of things that other horror movies don't do well, and that's why. Like, usually when horror movies try to go for emotional beats or make you give a shit about the characters, they fail miserably. And in this one, like, the relationships between her and Ying Ying and the whole, like, dual life with Ling was, like, awesome, and I loved everything about that. And, like, I never felt like it was cheap or forced or anything. And, again, the scares were awesome. So with those two things working together, I think this is a very, like... It's the cream of the crop in terms of how good horror movies could be. Yeah.
But yeah, like with these, like I like the fact that it wasn't like just like in your face scares. It was more like subtle scares. Like with the man with the in the elevator, like just his presence was scary enough. We didn't need the guy going like blood and going everywhere or whatever. It's like just the creepiness of him just floating around, and we're like,
I do love subtlety. I love subtlety, and I like this. I tend to like scares that are just a little toned down.
And that's why Asian horror is awesome.
We are definitely
Is it?
Hereditary
Or
these days.
or
Oh, God. I might have to sit that one out.
Now,
Oh
You don't like it?
no, I love it. That's like we'll talk about it later.
Nah.
it's like,
Okay.
I'm just very glad I didn't get to see like a huge CGI monster like an American movie would make around that time.
I
A
will
giant
say-
floating eye
I-
with tentacles.
I will say.
Oh, actually, I would still like that.
I would like that too.
I would say one thing I wish I could change, and I know you're saying it sucks, but I wish I would have watched the Jessica Alba version, just not to like totally compare it, just to see like the changes, the difference. You know, I just personally like I feel like sometimes you do need to see the remake just to see how crappy
Oddly similar.
or
It's
how great
it's
the
one of those
original
weird
was.
remakes where it's like, well, beat for beat, this is very similar. It's just doing things worse,
And
or
I'm
things
ter-
aren't hitting as
And I'm
well.
terrible because I'm one of those people that's like I have to watch the originals, and a lot of times that's all I watch. Like I don't like Let the Right One In. I only seen the foreign one. I've never seen the Let
We should
Let
do
Me
that
In or
movie
whatever.
sometime.
I love
There's
that.
that
so
movie.
much to talk about with that
movie's
one.
great.
I absolutely love that movie, so I'm biased on it. I'm going to
Oh,
be
it's
biased.
wonderful.
And it's a great vampire movie.
It is.
It is.
Absolutely.
So,
I
bam.
will say
Oh,
that.
So easily in my top five.
Yeah.
We're gonna make lists.
Yeah, we're gonna make lists. We're gonna do an episode where it's like our top fives, which you'll probably either already heard it, I guess, because it'll be later. So it'll probably be before this one. So you'll already know our top fives.
Our continuity is weird.
Yeah, we are definitely
Try to follow along with our lore.
Yes. Okay, so at this point, we would answer
Questions?
questions, emails, or whatever.
Message
As
us.
of now, we haven't received any yet. Of course, we're trying to build our audience.
Notice me.
So
Somebody needs to fake it.
So definitely, you can email us at mikeintheasylum4@gmail.com or hit us up on Facebook or Twitter. We do have pages on there, and we are also on YouTube right now. We are definitely putting our backlogs on there. So if you guys have any questions at all, even some critiquing, I don't care.
You guys suck.
Yeah, we're definitely new, and so of course we're just trying to hammer out all the kinks still.
Yeah.
And
I still suck at talking.
yeah,
Yeah,
But you don't suck at puns.
that's
You
true.
you have a part at this table.
Thank you.
all right.
I am here for puns alone.
So do we now want to do
So who's picking?
our next episode for next week, we are doing our Christmas
Oh, that's
episode,
right.
and it is
yeah.
Black Christmas, not the remake.
I don't even know if that's a remake. I think that's a completely separate movie that just happens to have a
No,
similar
it's a remake.
title.
It's
Is it?
Yeah.
it's a remake.
Right.
You know, because Billy.
And it was done so
Yellow
well.
bastard.
No, I'm just joking.
Yellow bastard.
So it's the 1974 Black Christmas, and this is on Shudder for everybody.
Oh, sweet.
So if you guys have Shudder, it's on
Glad
there.
I don't have to make
Um,
an Amazon Prime free account.
And so go ahead and give that a watch, and tune in for our Christmas episode next week. All right.
Sweet.
So until next time, you guys have a good night
Y'all
or
have a good night
good
now.
day.
Thanks for listening.
Hey, you guys have a great night.